Hey guys, welcome back to The Bright Side. Macy here, The Bright Side Girl, and today we're going to be talking about my top 12 favorite reads of 2022. It is here, it is finally time to start talking about all of our favorite reads incessantly. I originally was thinking about doing my top 22 favorite reads, but I just didn't have enough. I didn't have that many 5 stars, and usually those videos are crazy long, so we're gonna stick with 12. All of these books I gave 5 stars. There are a few more books that I gave 5 stars that are not gonna be on this list, but these are gonna be like my 12 most favorite, and we're gonna start from like least favorite to favorite. I had a big intention this year to really try to get some favorite reads in. Last year I only had 3 5-star reads, so this video was not very fun to film, and I did some things that really helped, so I'm glad that I actually have some 5-star reads to share with you guys, so we're just gonna dive right in. Okay, coming in at number 12, Tween, Frost and Fury by Shani Lynn Feener. This is book 2 in the Amid Stars and Darkness trilogy. I gave the third book, I think, 4.5 stars, but I really liked this second one. So this is a series I've talked about several times on my channel. I actually wound up picking up the first book at Dollar Tree just because the cover was pretty. I was getting ready to do like Galaxy-a-thon for the first time. It's about our world, and aliens have just become like a part of it. They kind of intermingle with people and society, and an alien princess comes to kind of like escape her home planet, and she swaps places with a human girl. Unbeknownst to the human girl, she basically makes the human girl look like her so that when her guards and things come to get her, they grab the human girl instead, take her up to their planet, and she basically has to pretend to be a princess for a while. So it is very cool. This has a really good love triangle in it. I just thought it was really well done. All the details about the spaceship and the food and all of that stuff was just such a blast. It's just a really fun trilogy. It's not overly scientific. Our main character is extremely spunky and hilarious. Our love interests are really cool, and I just really love this trilogy, and I was glad to finally wrap it up this year. And this is one that I physically read. Alright, coming in at number 11, and I'm very surprised because originally I was going to put this in my top 5 and it just kept getting bumped down because I had such a good reading year, is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I actually read this one for my 5-star TBR February, which I will link the vlog for that up in the cards. It was really fun because I had such a bad reading year last year. I had a bunch of my friends tell me their top 5 favorite reads of 2021, and then I compiled them up and I picked the ones that were mentioned the most, and I read a few of them during February, kind of hopefully curate 5 stars for myself, and this was one that was the most talked about of last year, so I will be doing this video again, so stay tuned for that. So this one, literally, like, I asked so many of my friends their top 5 favorite reads, and friends that have completely different reading tastes, friends that only read young adult, friends that only read adult, friends that only like smutty romance and all kinds of stuff, and this was on so many people's lists. I was quite shocked. So this is an adult kind of urban fantasy. I don't want to say too much about it because it will give some of it away, but we basically have a woman who makes a deal with the gods, and the deal changes her entire life. And so you're basically following her throughout her life and her different experiences, and it's just kind of one of those like thought-provoking books. It's just really good. It's got things to do with gods and goddesses, but also like real life, and I'm doing a bad job describing it because I don't want to say too much, but I really enjoyed it, and the narrator for this one, because I did it on audio, was very good as well. I will say with Addie LaRue, I've had a couple friends that didn't like it as much, and they both physically read it because it is a little bit more of like a slow burn, and it is a long book. I do think that the narrator being so good really makes this book. If you plan on reading it and you like audiobooks, definitely do the audiobook because I think it just puts it up another notch, and it really like enhances the writing. Alright, coming in at number 10 is actually Space Boy. So I'm going to put this entire series on here. This is actually a graphic novel. It's the only graphic novel to make the list. I picked this up just for Galaxy-a-thon because I wanted to get some shorter reads in, and I completely became obsessed and fell in love with this graphic novel series. It's a young adult graphic novel series. Our main character and her family live on a spaceship that's headed to a planet to do certain things, and it just takes hundreds of years to get there, and her dad is the mechanic for the spaceship, and everybody on the spaceship kind of knows that they're not going to like see the end destination, but their kids might. Her dad actually loses his job. It gets reassigned back to Earth. She gets cryogenically frozen. It takes 30 years to get there. She's very upset because by the time she gets there, her best friend will be 30 years older, and she won't know anything about what's happening on Earth or just in life because she's 30 years behind, and it's just really interesting. She has the ability ability to taste people. So it hits her kind of like smell does. She doesn't actually have to like lick them or anything, but they have different flavors to her. So she describes how her mother and all those people taste, and she meets a boy that has no taste and she gets to find out why. Loose description, so good, so incredible, so much fun. I believe this was originally a webtoon comic as well, so highly recommend this one. Coming in at number 9, and a big surprise to me, was Just Like Magic by Sarah Hogel. This is a new release for 2022. I talked about it in my new releases video a little bit, so I'll link that up in the cards as well. This is a Christmas holiday adventurous romance that I just snuck in towards the end of the year because I had a couple friends say that they really loved it. And basically our main character is the daughter of a famous actress, kind of like a Bette Davis style actress. And she is kind of spoiled and trying to make like her way by being like an influencer and doing different things. And she's kind of failing at it, and she's worried that her family is going to judge her. She gets like drunk on Thanksgiving, winds up playing Mariah Carey's All I Want for Christmas backwards, and summons Christmas spirit in the form of a very handsome man. His name is Hal, and he's there to give her Christmas spirit. And it is so good. It's so funny. It's like Elf meets like a Hallmark rom-com meets like something else that's really funny. I laughed out loud during this book like 4 times. I did the audio. The narrator was absolutely amazing. Hal like literally shows up and he's like, "Hello, I am Christmas spirit." And she's like screaming like, "Get out of my house." And he's like, "It's gonna be okay. I'm here to help." And he's really jolly, and he just brings all this festiveness into it, and it's just really fun and funny and sweet, and I loved it so much. So definitely going on one of my favorite Christmas reads like ever. So I was very excited to find this one kind of last minute. Coming in at number 8, we have Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking. I again read this for the Christmas season, but it is not holiday or winter. It's actually set in the springtime, but our main character is a wizard, and she has the ability to work with like bread and dough. So there has a lot to do with baking, and she works in a bakery. Very like warm and cozy that way, even though it's set in the springtime. So her familiar is actually a sourdough starter, and she has like gingerbread men that follow her around, and it's really fun. She walks into her grandmother's bakery one morning and finds a dead body on the floor, and she has to kind of solve this mystery. So we've got like a fantasy murder mystery magical goodness. It is so good. This was just such a solid fantasy. I just thought it was going to be like really fun, and it was really fun, but it was also just like a really good book. It was written really well. I did this one on audio. The narrator was amazing. So recommend this, and I will be checking out more from this author hopefully next year. Coming in at number 7 is going to be the entire fairy tale series from Jackson Pierce. Even though all the books are very individual, I loved them all. So we're going to put Sweetly up here because I think this was my favorite. So this is a fairy tale series. It's 4 books. It's a quartet. I did the audio for book 1, and I physically read the last 3 because I don't think they have audios. The first book is a Red Riding Hood retelling. The second is a Hansel and Gretel retelling. Third is Little Mermaid, and fourth is The Snow Queen. Now, these are all separate fairy tales with all separate characters. However, themes and villains and things from the other books play into all of them, so I highly recommend reading them in order because they do kind of tie together even though they have different stories. I feel like you'll enjoy them so much more. So I just really loved these. I read them so fast. They were just such good retellings and very unique, and they have little romances and things with family, and I love them so much. Highly recommend. Coming in at number 6 is War of Cards by Colleen Oakes. Another one that really surprised me. This is actually the 3rd book in an Alice in Wonderland sort of retelling, Queen of Hearts retelling. The first book being Queen of Hearts that I read in 2021, and I really enjoyed it. I remember thinking it was like a solid retelling, and then I read the second one early 2022, and I was like, wow, that was like really good. And then I read the 3rd one, and I was like, I love this series so much. The writing is so good. The backstory on the characters, being in Wonderland, finding out who everyone is, it is just amazing. It has a lot to do with like kingdoms and war, and it's a very short series. Like all the books I think are 300 pages or less, and I just highly recommend it. Such a solid retelling, and I just love them so much more than I was expecting. So this one kind of caught me off guard. Coming in at number 5, and this one I just finished today, is Ballad of Never After by Stephanie Garber. So this is the second in the Once Upon a Broken Heart, what I'm assuming is going to be a trilogy. This series is set in the same world as her Caraval series. I do recommend that you read Caraval first. They're not entirely connected, but there is a character in this book that's in the first one, and it's kind of nice to know the background. And a few things are kind of mentioned about Caraval. I feel like you'll enjoy them more if you read them in that order, and you'd be a little less confused. This second book, blew me away. I love Stephanie Garber so much. So glad I got this book in before the end of the year, so now I can look forward to the third one. I'm probably going to reread them again. These are narrated by Rebecca Solar, who's one of my favorite narrators of all time. Absolutely incredible. So I don't want to give away too much, but in this one you're basically following a girl who wants to stop the boy she loves from marrying her sister, and she summons a fate to help her do this, and then chaos ensues. Things just go crazy. It's very detailed, very whimsical, very romantic, very well thought out. The ending of this one is incredible, and yeah, I love Stephanie Garber. So if you've never read anything from her, start with Caraval because it's also amazing, and then just have a grand old time. Coming in at number 4 is Go Hunt Me by Kelly DeVos, another one that took me totally by surprise. Another new release. This one I read for Not So Scary-a-thon. I buddy read this with a friend and I had the best time. I did it via audio. Narrator was incredible. This one you're following a teenage girl who is creating a vampire indie film as like an application to get into a certain college. She wants to be a filmmaker, and her friends are creating this indie film, and then this famous actress kind of finds out what they're doing and wants to help out. She sends them all to go to her relative's Romanian castle to do the rest of the filming. It is rumored that like Vlad the Impaler once lived there, who was the inspiration for Dracula, and they're very excited. And then when they get there, things are not exactly what they seem. Things are kind of unsafe and dangerous. It's a thriller. It's a murder mystery. It's so good and so fun. It's definitely like wild and over the top. The things happening would never happen in real life, obviously, but you just kind of go in and enjoy the ride. I would say this is a little bit gory, but not too gory. It's not scary at all, in my opinion, even though there's like dramatic things happening. I really enjoyed this so much. The ending is especially good, and I was really surprised that this made my top 5 list. Coming in at number 3, another Victoria Schwab book, and that is Gallant. This one also blew me away. Before this year, Victoria Schwab was kind of hit or miss for me. Like, her writing is good, her concepts are always amazing, but sometimes I feel like her books can be kind of slow and even kind of like somewhat depressing. But this book was so amazing. You're following this orphan who is not able to speak. She is able to see ghosts. She is very interested in the past from her mother. She doesn't really know anything about her family. I think she has like a journal from her mother, and she gets summoned to go to Gallant House where some long lost relatives have found her. She feels like this is what's supposed to happen because she doesn't really have anywhere to go once she becomes of age and isn't in the orphanage anymore. But her mother had told her to always stay away from Gallant. So when she gets there, she meets her family, and there's just all these mysterious things that happen. I kind of treated this as like Secret Garden meets like Stranger Things. It was so good. Again, I don't find this scary. It does have a little bit of darker concepts. There's ghosts and things like that. I just thought it was really fabulous. The narrator is amazing. I loved it so much. I like already want to reread it. It's got Victorian Gothic vibes. I just loved it so much that it's making me want to reread some of Victoria's other books that I was kind of unsure about. Coming in at number 2, and what I thought was going to be number 1, because it was number 1 for a very long time, was The Loneliest Girl in the Universe. Now, I will say I highly recommend doing this on audio because I think that the narrator is absolutely incredible. Made this book because I've had a couple friends who did the audio and they loved it just as much as I did, and then I had some friends that physically read it and they didn't quite like it as much, but I think the audio is what really makes the difference. So in this book, you are actually following the loneliest girl in the universe. She is on a spaceship. She was there with her parents and they were sent to do like a mission to reach another planet, and her parents were both scientists and they had this like important mission, and then they both pass away, and she as a teen has to kind of continue on, and she's alone on this spaceship. All she can do is write back to Earth, but it takes like several weeks to get a response, and so she's learning how to grow up in this completely isolated environment. And then they tell her they're sending another ship that is more advanced that will kind of meet up with her and help her along the journey, and a bunch of things happen. So this is kind of a thrilling ride because it's very intense. I will say this did give me some anxiety because of how intense some of the situations get with her being on the spaceship alone and the mystery, but I kind of liked it. It was very thrilling. It's still young adult, so it's nothing like terrifying or way too intense. It was just a really fun ride. It's a very quick audiobook. Highly recommend for readathons especially. I loved this so much because it made me feel all the feelings. I was scared, I was sad, I was worried. It was just such a good ride, and I need to read more from this author ASAP. And then lastly, my favorite book of the year is Belladonna by Addie Grace. I've talked about this a bunch now. This one kind of swooped in and caught me off guard completely. So I had read All the Stars and Teeth by Addie Grace. I enjoyed the first book. I thought it was decent. I think I gave it 4 stars. I did not like the second book. It felt crazy to me. So I was not in a rush to read this next book that she had released, but then other people were loving it so much and I loved the concept, so I picked it up and I was blown away. Again, I did this one on audio. I loved the narrator so much. It did take me just a little bit to kind of get into the flow of things and kind of move things along, but once it did, I did not want the book to end. So in this one, you're following our main character who has been surrounded by death her whole life. Like when she was a baby, her parents, I believe, died. Same room as her. I think it was like a plague or an illness. I've already forgotten. And then her aunt dies when she's older. She said other people die around her as well. And she just feels like death is following her around. So there's all this mystery with that. And she, again, like Gallant, gets summoned to this house with these distant relatives. She goes there and finds that her new family, they have recently lost the mother of the house. I think they think she committed suicide, but she believes that it was a murder and she kind of tries to solve the murder. There's ghosts and things in this one. It is darker. It is a fall, like Halloween type of a read. This does have like a Jane Eyre Secret Garden vibe about it. I really, really enjoyed it. This has got all the gothic Victorian vibes. We've got death as a character in here. The romance is great. It's just such a good story and I'm so excited for the second book. Again, this is one I'm probably going to reread because I loved it so much and it kind of blew me away and like took over my heart. So I was really glad that I had something like this, especially towards the end of the year. Okay, you guys, so that is it for my top 12 reads of the year. Stay tuned. I should have 2 more videos coming up for the end of the year and then a bunch coming out in January as well. Please let me know your top 10 or your top 5 favorite reads of the year. I'm going to do another 5-star TBR February. So I use them to kind of make a huge list and pick some of my TBR reads for February. So let me know down below. I have a graphic that I made for your stories on Instagram that you can find here. I'm not going to have a folder for this. This is just one graphic, but I will put it up on my stories every day up until New Year's. So you can screenshot it and just fill it out and tag me if you use it. Or you can just tell me your top 5 favorite reads down below in the comments. It really helps me out and I'm always excited to see what everybody's favorites are, especially when they're all so different. Let me know if you've read any of these down below in the comments, which ones are kind of piquing your interest. Stay tuned. My next video is going to be all the 2022 reading stats and it's just going to be a really grand end of the year. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next time on The Bright Side.